This is Anshu Agarwal. Thanks all for joining in. I am in ThoughtWorks from last 7 years. I joined as an intern and then started my journey with the software engineering application development, from front end to back end and now to data engineering. Doing DE from last 3 years now. I have worked with Spark, Scala, Azure, AWS, Terraform, a lot of things here and there. And today I'm going to talk about ADF, Azure Data Factory. So before just starting the talk, I would just like to know, like, from people here, some simple question, like how many of you have actually worked in recent past with Azure? If you can answer the poll, that would be great. And the people who are in the audience, they can just shout out and with a raise of hands, maybe. Just cool. The answers are started coming in. And I think we have a decent, like some 40-ish around people who have here worked with Azure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, folks. Okay. And can I just also know if you have worked with ADF before as well? Stop sharing. And how to, yep, launch. Just to gauge, like, if I need to, where I need to emphasize more. So looks like a lot of you haven't worked with ADF. It's almost like 8%. Nice, nice. Good to know this. Cool. Okay, let me then just share my screen and let's get started. And yes, please use Q&A. At the end of the talk, I'll answer all your questions if I can. Yeah. 10 minutes, just sharing my screen. Cool. So today let's learn about what is ADF, when should we use it, and why even we should use ADF. So this is the agenda of the talk. I'll be covering a little bit of history of DE, like why the tools like ADF is all, like, why there's a need for a tool like ADF in the first place. Then what is ADF? What are its components? A small demo. The scenarios when you can use ADF, some of its features, and then why ADF, and some differentiation between ADF and its fellow competitors. Cool. Starting with what is ADF. So let me take you to a journey. Everyone knows about Netflix here. They watch their favorite shows and series there. So you are on Netflix watching your shows. And then suddenly after like a week or so, you are getting recommendation from the Netflix, right? I hope everyone here understands that how a recommendation works. Maybe it's basically you are viewing some type of horror movies, and then after some time Netflix started telling you, okay, these are some really good horror movies, you might try these as well. So how is this happening, and why ADF is needed in this scenario? Let's explore that. So there are two major online processing system: online transaction processing system and online analytical processing system in the software world. Online transaction processing system is where you are constantly saving all your transactions. So whenever you are clicking on the shows, you are applying any filters, and you are providing any ratings, all these are transactions which are getting accumulated as part of your interactions with the system. And these interactions are getting stored in this Netflix DB. So basically, this is where new data is getting created. Now, moving on to the OLAP, online analytical processing system, where these data is being analyzed, where you are basically analyzing what type of data you have gathered, what knowledge and wisdom you can apply on that data, and what type of insights you can take it out. So if you are watching, like, basically in the night, all these shows. So that also shows some, user preference there. So such type of insights Netflix can draw from your data. But to do that, Netflix needs your data to be stored in some type of data lake or storage accounts, which here we are calling as Netflix data lake. Now, how this data would move from Netflix DB to Netflix data lake is what is the job of Azure Data Factory. We have tons of tools to do the same thing, but today we are going to focus how Azure Data Factory can actually help in the seamless, a little code-free manner to take your data from one place to another. Okay. So Azure Data Factory, it's a cloud data integration service used to compose data storage, movement, processing services into automated data pipelines. So what do I mean by that? So it's a cloud data integration where, you compose data storage, where your data will be stored, how it will move from one place to another, any kind of processing you want to do on your data into an automated data pipelines. And it's all like on the click of the button. It's not, I think a lot of things, it's a code-free ETL. You can just, put a lot of drag and drops things, activities, data sets, and you're good to go. You'll bear with me and you'll know what I'm talking about. So code-free ETL as a service. What do I mean by that? It can ingest from a multi-cloud premise. It has 100 plus native connectors. You can connect your data factory with connectors, be it RDBMSs, be it file storage, be it from any other cloud storages, normal file-based system, SFTP, anything. There are like 100 plus native connectors through which you can directly connect your data and get into the data factory. Then you can apply a control flow over it, which is like designing a code-free data pipelines, which with the construct like loops, branches, conditional execution, variables, etc. The data flow is the transformation part which executes in the Spark. Here you can, here you can aggregate your data, join your data, and do whatever, the DE stuff you want to do with your data. You can schedule these pipelines on the tumbling window, or you can give a normal cron job, and you can trigger it on a manual basis as well whenever you want these pipelines to run. And then you can monitor this data as well. Azure gives you a very great monitoring experience with these factories as well as with any other um, service of it. So let's understand this concept of Azure Data Factory. A very simple example where you want to move a cabinet from one shop to your home. So let's say this shop has a address and this cabinet has some kind of lock. So you need this key and address to unlock this shop and cabinet. And then you need some kind of disassembling info. So you cannot carry just the entire cabinet just like that. You need to disassemble it, and you need some kind of info to disassemble it, like how big is the cabinet, what are the contents of it, and so on and so forth. Then you need someone who can, deliver you need someone to give you the delivery details, where to take this cabinet to, how far is that place, and like mode of transport and etc. Then you need an assembly info again to assemble back the cabinet, and then the key and address of the home where you want to place this address. Then all of this needs to be performed by a delivery man. And suppose that such deliveries, to do multiple such deliveries, we need a delivery manager as well. Now to map the same thing to Azure Data Factory, that's how your Azure Data Factory pipeline looks like. So your cabinet is nothing but your data to be moved, which is being stored in some kind of storage. Here we are storing it on blob storage. The linked service is basically the address and the key, which you need to, authenticate and access this data to. Then data set is the type of this data. Here you are defining what type of data this is, how this data looks like, and basically the disassembling info. The copy activity is the delivery details, where you are telling what to do with this data, how to take it from one place to another, all the details which need to deliver this. And again, the data set at this sync, like where you want to take it to, and the link service for the shop or the SQL or wherever you want this data to, to sync into. Sorry for that. So the delivery man here is the integration runtime. This is your cluster where your entire pipeline will run and all the logic will get executed. And your delivery manager is the Azure Data Factory, which is overlooking all of this. So this is just to give you an overview of the basic concepts of the ADF. Now, Azure Data Factory can have, so these copy activities basically are part of a pipeline. These activities, pipelines are the, pipeline can contain one or more activities where you can tell like what you want to do with data. You can copy the data and then you want to transform it and then you want to load it to some kind of data storage, anything in between you want to do that you will define in the pipeline. All the copy activities would have a data set associated with them, the source and the sink. And similarly, they'll have a key linked service associated with it as well. So if you are sharing the data set, the linked services can be shared here. You need not to create it again and again. So these are the concepts of ADF and their definitions. You can just have a look here. Okay, moving on. So let's dive into a small demo where we'll create our own Azure Data Factory on our pipeline, and we'll be moving online sales JSON data from one blob storage to GenLake 2 for within Azure, and let's see how easy or difficult it is to do. Okay. Sharing my screen again. So you can just create a data factory from Azure homepage. I've already created one, but just to show some basic features of Azure Data Factory, let's create one. You just need a resource group, a unique name, and the region where you want to move. And there are two versions of Azure Data Factory. Select version 2 for the latest. You can also configure the Git repos. It could be either on the GitHub or in the Azure DevOps. Right now, ADF only support these two type of repos. We'll talk about the CI/CD flow later in the talk. And here you can configure your repos. Networking here is for the integration runtime. So as I told you, integration runtime is some type of a cluster where your entire jobs are getting run. So either you can have your own self-hosted integration runtime, or you can actually have something which is given by Azure itself, which is called auto resolve integration runtime. So if you want to have your own clusters connected, it's just asking how do you want to connect, public or privately. The data encryption, how you want to encrypt your data. Do you want to encrypt using customer managed keys, or you want to use Microsoft managed keys? Add tags and review and create. So that's...
Can you please increase the font size a bit?
Oh, sure. Is it better?
Yeah, just a little bit more. Yeah, now it's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the demo ADF Geek Night factory, which I have created for you already. Let's launch this thing. And oh, actually it's already here. Cool. So this is how your launching page looks like, where you can ingest, orchestrate, transform data, and it has its own component. Let's move to the pipeline page, the authors. So this authors has some components: pipeline, dataset, data flow.
Also, sorry to interrupt, but there is a one ask from the office that can we go a little slow so they can understand better.
Sure. Thanks. Okay, no problem. So this is the factory resources here. So pipeline is where you like put everything together so that it is it's similar to the airflow DAGs, if some of you might have heard about. So the way you write operators in the DAGs, that's similar to a pipeline here. And these activities, move and transform, synapse, and anything else is more like an operators where you tell what to do. So I've already created some data sets and data flows for you. Let me just take you through this first. So I have two storage accounts created, where this storage account is my source from where I'm taking my sales data, which looks like this, this has a sales JSON. Yep, it yeah, it looks like, I'll show you in the linked service that how does it look like. And I want to copy this sales JSON from this to this ADLS account into this folder, which is sales data. Currently, this is empty. Now let's see how we can actually create data sets. So let me create a new copy pipeline for you. So this copy pipeline is asking us the general thing, like the name of the copy, the description, the timeout till which you want this pipeline to run. Right now, it's like for 12 hours this can run, and then it will time out. Number of retries, retry interval, and secure input and output. Sorry for that. Source is where you attach your source data sets. So here you will tell from where you want to copy and what you want to copy. I've already created 2 data sets, but let's create one more. So this is the number of connectors I was talking about. So now you can connect from any of this. It can be a MongoDB, ODBC, MySQL, Presto, SAP connections, Spark Job, Zoho, Zero. Like it has like 100 plus connectors to connect from. Amazon S3, Redshift, and etc. etc. Right now, for ease, let me just select Azure Blob Storage, and these are the file format this source has. It's suppose Avro, Parquet, binary, and being a DE, I think this is this ORC Parquet Avro support looks just so cool to me. Actually, I don't have to think twice. Even if I have files in these format, I don't have to convert it back. I can just directly use, or basic is like just convert my CSVs into Parquet. The basic conversion Spark job which I used to write is very easy now here. But this is a JSON data set. Let me just select a JSON, the name, and the link service. Let's create a new link service. As we all know, link service is like basically telling how I can authenticate and how I can access this data set. And to access this, the authentication type it is giving me are account keys, as URI, service principal, system assigned managed identity, and user assigned managed identity. Because this is in my subscription, Azure subscription, in this Azure subscription, I don't have to do much. All I have to do is just select where is that present and what is the Azure subscription associated to it. And I can be done with it. That's like that's my one linked list created. Now it's asking me where and what all files to pick. I can just tell the pick this from this container, the sales JSON. And my new linked data source has been generated. Now here I can preview the data to see whether it has been able to fetch the data or not. And yeah, it has been able to. So it is a JSON with a sales order, which looks like this. Now moving to the sync. Actually, this also gives me a lot of things which I can configure. I can move the files recursively, or I can enable the partition discovery by itself. It can tell me like if there is some column on which I can do partitions or not. The maximum concurrent connections. If I want to connect to a DB and I don't want to overload it by my connection, I can also tell that how many connection this fellow can make and limit that as well. Any additional columns I want to add. So here maybe one of the very common column we all add our ingestion date, when this data was ingested in our data lake. And I can say it's a dynamic content. And the value of this could be a function where I just want a UTC now timestamp. So this column would be added along with all the columns within this JSON. Now the sync one. Similarly, I can have the sync data set. I have created a CSV data set. So basically, I'm just converting a JSON to CSV, not a very useful example, but so that you can view how this is getting, how this is getting transformed, and I can show you the preview. I'm just using CSV here. And it is also created in the similar way. I can tell the maximum block size. So if I create a parquet, okay, let me create a parquet. I can show you some very cool, interesting features. So I can just say Azure Blob Storage again and parquet. And I can create a new linked list, new linked service to my refined storage where I want to put this data to. And I can say, put it in the sales data. This is my another storage account. And here you can see I have a copy behavior where it is asking to flatten the hierarchy. Like if I have multiple folders to copy from, if I've chosen the recursive thing from here, that however in how much depth the data files are, copy everything. Here I can say just flatten the hierarchy and put everything in the same folder, or even merge the files or preserve the hierarchy, whatever I want to, however I want to copy the data. The block size is like how much big each file should be. Any metadata I want to associate it, this sync with, and the max row per file. So this is more like a repartition which we do while we are writing the data to the syncing, right? So all those repartition things are being done here for me without writing any code. So they are giving me all these options. But for readability sake, let's just choose CSV data set. Coming on to the mapping. So let me just import the schemas. Here, what this fellow is saying. So this is the schema for my source. That's how my JSON looks. And what all the column names it will have in my sync. So I can just say, I don't want sales, or, if I want to just make this all with snake casing. So whatever I want to do with my, source sync data set, I can just do all that formatting here. I can select the type of these columns again. So this is string. Let me just string. And I think this is how you can just do all your cast type. This is what we are doing here, right? So as you can see that order date is string, I can just say that this is a date time for me then. I don't have to store it in string format only. And this is my additional column ingestion date. And this is also being stored as date time. And I can delete if I don't want to, have all the columns data to be present in my source. So all these I can do in the mapping. The maximum data integration unit. So the cost of the ADF depends on this data integration units, and this is how it is being calculated. Currently, I have selected auto. Let this ADF choose what is best for this job to be, but you can have your own number here as well. Degree of parallelism.
I'm so sorry. Can you please increase the font size from the Gurgaon office? Folks, is it better? Yes. Thank you.
Let me make more space here as well. and any fault tolerance, like if there are any incompatible rows, just skip them, or if there are any missing files, just forbid them. Any of it, we can enable logging as well and give the path where you want to, have that logging stored as well. So all you can do it from here. And the user properties are like the auto-generated variables where you can, make this parallel, make this dynamic as well. So that's how you can have your copy activity. Now let's just try to run this one. So this is the same copy activity I've created previously. Let's just run this one. And I've also done a partition root path sales here. It also have an ingestion date. And I think for the mapping, okay, let me just actually use this one only. File extension txt, and I hope I have selected the headers. Otherwise, I'll not be able to show you folks. CSV data set. Yeah. So this is the CSV data set I have selected. This has a file path from here, like it will be stored in this path. It's already selected. I can do a compression as well. Like if I don't want to store it as a CSV, I can compress it as well, give a column delimiter, and first row as header. Yeah, that's what I want to check. Cool. Now coming back to our copy activity, let me just make some space here. Yeah. So this copy activity, now you can debug and test whatever you have done is actually working or not. And so this is saying the data flow is not. Let me delete this data flow for now. This doesn't have all the required things. And mapping sync is empty. Okay, let's just run this one only. I know this works, so. Okay, this also is, actually this one is the one which is causing a problem. Let me delete this one. So now my copy data one has been started. It's been queued and it's running. Yeah, I was just going through the chat, like sync is not a column, correct, Shrishti? It's the destination where we are copying our data to. It's like source from where you pick up the data, and sync is where you put that data to. Let's see what's happening in this activity right now. So it's been able to, so the data read is of around 29 MB, and currently the data which has been written is 10 MB. There's one file read and one file written. So if I would have said that, write 10 rows in per file, so like 50, like this divided by 10, those number of files would be here. The peak connection here is 7, and the reading from source, the total duration, you can see all those details in it. And yep, it's been succeeded. So let's just check what has happened here. So this is our refined storage where we wanted to move the data, and we have a sales txt here. Awesome. Let's just see how this looks like. So this has our new column ingestion date, which has a date time attached to it. It doesn't have all the numbers. So it does, as you say, I've removed the sales and sales order number and order line number, and we have the new columns with snake casing and all other are camel casing. So our mapping has been done correctly, and all the columns which we didn't want are not here as well. So this is a very small example of one of the things which ADF can do in a very, code-free manner. If I have to code this as a Spark job, I don't think so I'll be able to do it in 15-20 minutes. So I think that's the power of ADF for me. Okay, so now moving on to when you should use it. So what I showed you is just one use case and a very basic use case of, copying data or just one file from one location to another. But this is not just the simple use case which ADF supports. ADF supports multiple use cases. One of them could be actually, have a metadata driven ingestion. So one thing which I forgot to tell you is that there are a lot of ways through which you can add variables and parameters to your pipelines or, to your data sets as well. One way I showed you is that, right, you added a new column, but you can also add parameters here, where you can, say that, pick these values from these parameters, and these parameters can also change from different environments. So things like that can actually help you do a metadata driven ingestion, where you can do an ingestion of multiple, basically multiple batch ingestions using multiple pipelines. Because right, in real life, you don't have only one file to move, correct? So just to depict this scenario, how we can do it in ADF, suppose we have like 4 different data sets, online sales, promotion type, products, and currency codes. And we have this data engineering metadata database, which is nothing but a database which has the metadata for all these 4 files, like how these 4 data sets can be actually, transferred to this data lake parameterized way, in a parameterized way. These all 4 data sets are present in this Azure blob storage, and this batch orchestration pipeline has access to this, where it is reading all the metadata and telling the ADF that how it can has 4 different pipelines for 4 different data sets. So what it all does, it submit a batch ingestion metadata, which tells, like, it initialize, and then it initializes the batch ingestion for that particular data set, and then the ADF just run that particular ingestion. That's the job of this batch ingestion engine. So yep, this is like one of the feature, one of the use cases. The other use cases could be incremental ingestion of the data set as well. It's very much possible to give a checkpoint value in the data flow, and you can have the incremental set files ingested. Event based ingestion is also possible in ADF. So I think there the opportunities are endless. So like what all you can do with ADF here. Now just to move on to the features, CI and CD publish. So CI/CD is like one of the very useful feature of Azure Data Factory, where you can publish your debug mode data factory to the test and the production level pipelines, and it's quite easy to do. So ADF uses something called ARM templates, so where it has all the JSON corresponding to this data factory, and then it publish it to the different environment of Azure Dev, Test, or Prod. So in the beginning, I showed you that you can configure your Git repos, be it Azure DevOps repos or GitHub repos. You push your changes to that dev branch, and then the collaboration happened at the master branch. And when you publish it, so this is what we did. We just put a debug, but once we are satisfied with whatever this fellow is doing, I can just do a publish all. And it will publish this. Currently, it's saying there's some error in the data flows, which is quite empty. But yep, I can publish it once it has all the required changes. And then this published data set data factory can actually go through a release management where the ARM template for this data factory would be stored and released to the different environments. When I say ARM templates, it's this, like from here, you can export the current ARM template of this data factory. And it just looks like something this. It's a JSON where, my sync data lake, it has all the configuration which I need, which I've done in this data factory stored as a JSON. And now with using this, my whole release management can be done. I can also import the different ARM templates from, people who have created their own ADF, and I can just directly use it if I don't want to create from the scratch. And there are quite a lot people who are, making those templates for us. So you can refer to this for that. And this is the generic flow that the Azure data factory you save and publish into your Azure DevOps repos. Develop, raise the PR to the master. Once the master has been published, ADF published, then your release pipeline gets triggered, deploy as an RM environment, and then it is in your UAT, and the similar you can take it to the prod. So this is a combination of a code-free ETL with some developers who can, just create their basic or like whatever use cases they want to do with ADF, and then also maintain it in a dev fashion where they have different environment for different things. The one feature which comes very handy for this is feature flag, where you can say that, this is something which I am ready to deploy and something I'm not. So your ADF also provides you with that information, with that use case, where you can just have an if condition whether this is needed or not. The monitoring I was telling you. So this is the monitor tab for this, where you can monitor all your copy pipelines, what it did, what was the stats of it. And as well, you can create your trigger runs here. You can just schedule your pipelines. You can give a tumbling window, a period within which you want to create any kind of events which might trigger it, or any custom events you want to have to, trigger these runs. All you can have it here. And then you also have alert and metrics. So you can also create some type of alerts when, if your pipeline fails. So similar to Airflow, whenever our pipeline fails, we just, send some emails to our like respective fellow like stakeholders to make them know that, this is where something bad has happened. You can look, or even a success email, anything like that. All those alerts and monitoring can be happen via ADF too. Now, moving on to why ADF. So, as I was working with ADF, I just wondered, like, why do we need a separate Spark cluster, or, like HDI or EMR, and why do we even need a separate orchestration tools like, Fivetran or Airflow? Like, I have all the functionality here within ADF. So why it's needed? While working with ADF, I got to know that it has great power as a starter. So if you are a very small company who wants to, jump into their data journey, who wants to, showcase some spikes, some, POCs to the client to tell like whether this is something which is even possible or not, I think ADF is a very great start for this. It works with a medium workload. Actually, it claims it works with a higher workload as well. But as I have worked with it, I think this is a very great example where you don't need a very great data engineering team to maintain your very sophisticated data platforms or data lakes. But you can start your journey with ADFs and then move to your, having a big clusters on Databricks, or having an orchestration tool for Airflow when the need arises. A lot of time people start from Airflow, Databricks, HDI, and then and after a year or two they realize that they don't have such use cases for data right now. So I believe then that's the main advantage of using ADF, and that's where ADF can actually shine. Also, like for one of my client, they actually used ADF to copy the biggest data from Postgres to storage accounts, which was like quite a heavy and tedious task for DE engineers, and they actually did it in like 2-3 days with ADF. So that's what ADF speaks about its own capability. So yeah, that's it, folks. That's all I have for you. So let's move on to the Q&A section. So ADF is a no-code ETL tool or just transport helper? It's a no-code ETL tool. It's just not a transport helper. You can actually do a lot of things with it. Thanks for asking this question. I actually missed telling you the other benefits of ADF. So this pipeline, okay, yeah. So this pipeline actually has a lot of things here as an activities. I just show you a copy data, but a data flow is where you can do all the transformation on the data, the debug, the joins, the aggregations and all. It actually has an integration with a lot of other things. The notebook, you can directly attach any Databricks notebook here and run it, take it output, and then do other things with it. You can have a jar. You can run a Spark jar on the Databricks cluster if you already have it, and then pipeline, use it in the pipeline to do other things. You can connect with the HDIs inside Pig, Spark, streaming. Here you can just have, append any variable. On the basis of this variable, just do what toggle the flow or anything like that. So it has a lot more functions which I have just shown you. So it's just not a transporter, it does more than that. Okay, moving on to the next Q&A. ADF first link service is also database. No, it was actually just a storage account, Nandini. It was not a database, but you can link it. We choose CSV format, but in storage, it has the type as TXT and not CSV. Why it's the case? So you can actually have any type of file extension. You can also have a CSV here. That's okay. That's something which default comes. So I just chose it that. What is the role of repository in this context? So Alexander, the role of repository comes in CI/CD. I hope I was able to answer it in this slide. If not, so you can just have your ARM template stored in your Git repositories, and then you can release it as and when required. If you use Azure DevOps, that's something which Azure DevOps will manage for you. But for GitHub or for manual releases, you can also download the ARM template just I showed you in the talk, and then have it in the Git repos. Is Spark really an equivalent to ADF? My understanding of Spark is that it is a data distribution platform like MapReduce. I haven't heard of being used as an ETL. Yeah, Spark is not equivalent to ADF. You can run Spark jobs on ADF. So ADF is like, it's a platform where you can have Spark jobs or any other type of jobs, simple copy jobs. But I was using Spark as an example because as a DE, I'm like, I used to write jobs for these smaller use cases as well. And after a time, I think like data engineers also find it like writing these mundane jobs very boring. And if like we have something like ADF, which can take over this mundane task and we can focus on something better, some tricky jobs where some tricky transformations are needed, maybe I want to spend my time there rather than just copying data from one place and just doing a minimal mapping in a Spark job. So that's why I was referring to Spark. Is there any standard KPI supported in Azure Monitor? Is it monitoring or observability? It's both actually. It's monitoring and observability both. And I'm not sure about the standard KPIs which it supports. Shailesh, sorry. Is there an option to see and edit underlying Python Spark script? No, actually, no. You can't see or edit the underlying Python scripts or any Spark scripts which is running. So if you are running a Spark scripts as a jar or something, just modify it wherever you have written it and then put as a jar, but you can't edit whatever is happening beneath this. What kind of atomicity of work does ADF provide? How does it, if a job transaction fails while in transit? Atomicity of work is basically an activity is an atomicity of work, Srijit. So whatever an activity is doing, that is how it that is one atomic work that particular pipeline is doing. If it fails, it you have the logs. I also gathered some logs here. Let me just show you. It helps you debug there. So yep. So I have some copy sales activity logs also generated for all the runs. And you can refer these logs to see like why your job has failed and what you can do to make it pass. Okay, I think I can download it. Yeah, so this one was just saying that this was a happy run, so nothing is there. It's just saying complete reading file successfully and start to write file. But these can help you to debug when it fails. How does it react if a job transaction fails while in transit? So it just shows you that the pipeline has failed. That's it. And it like it gives you error. That's it. Nothing else. Can we connect to a database outside of Azure? Yes, for sure, Alexandra. You have 100 plus connectors. Any database outside of Azure, most of it are actually supported. Is it possible to write your own connectors? Talent allows for custom Java. No. So Morgan, right now there's no support to add your own connectors, but we have this community, Azure community, who's adding connectors as and when we are speaking, but you cannot add your own Java or any type of custom connectors. Shilash, can we say ADF as zero ETL tool? Came across similar tools like Prophecy, any distinction with other popular low code, no code? So zero ETL tool, I'm not sure what do you mean by zero ETL. Do you mean zero code ETL, Shailesh? And as I know, like the other zero code, yes, it is a zero code ETL according to me. I don't have to actually code anywhere. All I'm doing is using like a drag and drop or, all those option to make it dynamic, but I'm not coding anywhere. Although I do have Azure functions if I do want to code something there, but as it says, it is a zero code ETL. And similar tools could be like Databricks, Delta Life Tables, or AWS Glue. They also provide a very similar use case where you have an end-to-end ETL attached to it, and you can actually write logic to perform copy, transformation, etc. I think what Databricks Delta Life Table does is it is more of a code, still more of a code, but happening all in Databricks. Like everything is there in Databricks. You can also, have a Git repos attached to it and version control it, but still it is a code. And Glue is almost similar to what we have seen here. It's almost like this, but it Glue also supports to write, the custom Python script for you. It is Glue of, according to me, as well is not as much code free as ADF is. Okay, moving on to next. Is ADF similar to Azure DevOps for data? I think Azure DevOps is mainly for the pipeline and the hosting of the repos. I don't think so. They are similar to me. Okay. How is the pipeline offering different from one provided as part of Azure Synopsys? Yes, it is actually very similar to Azure Synopsys, Ayan. Yep, it is. It's like Azure Synopsys has a major, it's a better, it's basically an AI side. I have not worked with Azure Synopsys, but a lot of time the documentation takes me there. So that's how I'm able to relate. But it is something which is the same. How to link ADF with Bitbucket? There's no way to do that, Chirag. Even our client, actually, we also work on Bitbucket, and the use case which our client gave is to link it to Bitbucket, but currently there is no way. ADF says, the community says, Microsoft says they are working on it, but I don't know whether, this is when this will be there. So currently, no, you can't work with Bitbucket with ADF. Low code, no code platform has its inherent restrictions. Are there any known limitations? Yes. So known limitation, I think when it comes to the complex use cases, Shailesh, I don't think so you can rely on ADF. As I said that as in when your work, your transformations, your load becomes heavier, I believe this will, start hurting you more rather than helping you. I look ADF as a tool for initial data platforms, but not, the full-fledged data lake or data platforms, which, a lot of companies are maintaining that it's not a replacement for that. Our stakeholders sometimes use ADFs directly because it's so much, friendly to them. But as and when their need requires, for like have something more complex, you can't support in ADF. And one thing which I actually want to point out are debugging as well. I have seen debugging is not quite that easy in ADF. All you have is that one log file, and that log file sometimes just says that it failed. It doesn't tell you the exact reason that why it has failed. So I also believe the more complex things you want to do and then it starts failing, it's also not easy to debug. So these are some limitations according to me. You mentioned that ADF is for some quick experimentation. Does it mean for limited use cases? If there are known limitation, what is better alternatives like that? Yeah, as I've said, right, it has its own limited use cases. Better alternatives would be as according to me, it would be more like where you have better control of what you want to do with your data and how you want to do it. Then I think Databricks or even EMR for that matter are much better than that, are much better than ADF.
Anshu, there is question from Gurgaon office. Prakhar, can you go ahead?
Yeah, Anshu, I wanted to ask, you told about batch ingestion and incremental ingestion. Is there an option for real-time ingestion also?
Yes, it's a possibility for streaming as well. You can have streaming also here.
Prakhar?
Yes.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Anshu. Any more questions? Yeah, go ahead, Anshu.
Yep, I think I'm done. I was just answering the questions. I think we have one more. How do you secure dataset keys? Dataset keys as in linked services, you mean, Vaughan? So basically there are like secrets which you can have in Azure walls, if you're talking about those, but I'm not sure exactly what you mean by dataset keys. Okay, I think there's a time for another talk now. Let's take this offline if we may. Yeah, the data store credentials actually can be stored in Azure Key Vault, and you can actually have access from there. Yeah, Vaughan. Thank you everyone.